niña quiere mejor.
Our project is on the economist Karl Marx. Um, in his early life, Karl Heinrich Marx was born into a middle-class home in Trier in Germany on May 5th, 1818. His family on both sides were both long lines of rabbis, and his father had also agreed to convert from Judaism to Protestant Christians so that he would not lose his job as one of the most respected lawyers in Trier. Around the age of 17, Marx enrolled in the faculty of law at the University of Bonn to follow in his father's footsteps as a very respectful lawyer. At Bonn, he met and became engaged to a girl named Jenny von Westphalen, who was the daughter of Baron von Westphalen.
Westphalen was a prominent member of the Trier Society and also was the man responsible for introducing Marx to Romantic literature and Saint-Simonian politics. The following year, Marx's father sent him to the more serious University of Berlin, where he remained 4 years and abandoned his Romanticism for the Hegelianism. Soon after attending the University of Berlin, Marx became an editor and because of his works later emigrated to France due to his radical newspaper about Prussian government.
During Marx's first few months in Paris, Marx became a communist and set down his views in a series of writings known as the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts. These writings outline the human conception of communism. These writings were influenced by the philosophy of Ludwig Feuerbach and based on a contrast between the alienated nature of labor under capitalism and a communist society in which human beings freely develop their nature and cooperative production. This is around the same time that Marx began to come up with his ideas of an economy.
Marx later moved to London because he began to try to spread his communist ideas through the International Working Men's Association, which was a group that wanted to improve the life of the working class. After moving, Marx was forced to use his wife's money and eventually become poor. He began to write articles for the New York Tribune and other newspapers in order to survive. At the time of the Industrial Revolution, many factory workers and miners in Germany, France, and the United Kingdom were not getting enough money to support themselves or their families. Marx saw this as a chance to provide his ideals on economy. Marx and his collaborator Engels provided an interesting and timely interpretation of history based on the struggle between economic classes. He soon published his manifesto titled Das Kapital and said that the North American and European economies would collapse economically and socially.
Marx began to invite workers to join and support his movement. He also wanted to kind of like spread his ideas throughout the world. In his book, Marx predicted that workers would rebel against the owners of factories and take over the economy. Marx also argued that the working class produced more goods and services than they could ever use, and on the other hand, the owners of factories had more than they themselves produced. This would cause problems for the factories. His examples, such as masters and slaves, lords and vassals, and middle-class owners and workers, to prove his point of workers being mistreated and eventually rebelling over their masters or lords, or in this case, middle-class owners.
Marx believed that if things continued this way, capitalism would slowly start a revolution throughout the world. Capitalism is the economic system in which private people, not the government, own and run companies. These companies are said to compete. Marx believed that if things continued this way, capitalism would slowly start a revolution throughout the world. Capitalism is an economic system in which private people, not the government, own and run the companies. These companies are said to compete with other companies for business. They decide what products they want to produce, how much they should cost, and where to sell them. He believed that eventually factories would have to fire workers because people would not be buying enough products. The consequence of this would be an angry working class that would start a revolution to take over the economy and government, which would create a communist society.
From about 1850 to 1980, this interpretation formed the reason for existence and the formulation of political economic policies in about one quarter of the world. Unfortunately, the political expression of Marxism was inhumane, cruel, even, and did not satisfy the humane society or the individual, which is why most people disagreed with him and did not approve of his ideas. It led to military dictatorships, new political and family dynasties to replace the old monarchies, fear and loathing of state police who should protect the population, subjugation of the individual to the dogma of the state, and an even greater economic divisions than before.
These theories have had numerous amounts of influence throughout the modern world. For example, under Lenin's rule, the Soviet Union became the first and largest communist state. Eventually, other communist nations have developed, such as Eastern Europe, China, Cuba, and North Korea. Since about the 1980s, the majority of the human population has been freed from Marxist communism, and it exists still in only a few impoverished and violent communities. China, with its massive population, can hardly be called Marxist anymore. It is a dynastic crap. It is a dynastic dictatorship in which the rhetoric of Marxism is used to explain the suppression of dissent. His influence was major for a time, but now is in serious decline. Marx's critique of capitalism made the following arguments: that capitalism, despite its complex language, is simply another form of class-based society where social classes are determined not by bloodline, like in aristocratic systems, or in control of simple property, like in feudalism, but through ownership of the tools needed for production.
Capitalism, unlike other class societies, allows for near total control over lower classes, since no one is able to acquire even the basic necessities of food and shelter except through the use of those tools owned by the capitalist class. That this situation can only result in ever increasing exploitation of the lower classes until sheer starvation forces them to revolt. Marx's own work was primarily philosophical, pointing out that so long as class distinctions persist, exploitation will continue unchecked, with misery and social upheaval as the inevitable result.
Marx himself never actually suggested revolution, but politically, Marx's theory acted as a catalyst to a number of actual revolutionary movements, such as communism, socialism, and Marxism, which in their various ways attempted to overthrow and remove the capitalist class from social and political power.
The impact of movements of this sort can be seen everywhere in the world, from actual communist and socialist nations to minimum wage laws, welfare assistance, labor unions, and other working class protections in ostensibly capitalist societies. Most of these are still highly contentious. Communist societies tend towards totalitarianism, which is also known as a political system where the state holds total authority over society and seeks to control all aspects of public and private life where feasible. And it's often criticized for their inability to stamp out social classes or improve quality of life for their population. Um, Unions, welfare, and minimum wage laws are often attacked from both the far left and far right. The far right sees them as inhibitions to market forces, while the far left sees them as sops designed to keep the lower classes from getting too miserable while the capitalist classes continue its exploitation.
Philosophically, Marx's theories influenced a wide range of modern social and political theory. Most European social theory is deeply concerned with the difficulties of integrating capitalism and democratic processes. The various forms of postmodernism largely utilize Marx's analytical style, and most of the civil rights theorists have adopted class language. The class language adopted was usually in the form of white European or male class, which dominates and exploits classes composed of people of color, colonial regions, or women.
In a nutshell, Karl Marx had a very great impact on the economy back then and even still today. And even though he might not be as talked as nowadays, or communism might not be as great of an influence, it still exists in today's world. Um, that was our interview and explanation on how Karl Marx had an effect on the economy and what his life was about. Thank you for your time, and God bless.
Chance we get, we